Yeah, I love you, Sprout. Until the end of time.
Initially, the cause of Victoria's death was not revealed, and the MMA community respected the family's wish for privacy. However, in September 2023, Angela Lee shared the devastating truth in a personal essay for the Players Tribune. Victoria had taken her own life. In her essay, Angela Lee opened up about her own struggles with mental health, revealing that she had also once attempted suicide. She wrote about an incident from November 2017, which had previously been reported as a car accident.
My car accident on November 6, 2017 was not an accident. I attempted suicide. For the longest time, I blocked this out of my mind. It's been 6 years, and although I've done a lot of growing and healing since then, it's still difficult to think about, let alone talk about. Because even after my attempt, I was still too afraid to say what I was feeling.
In the same essay, Angela revealed that her younger sister Victoria had also struggled, though few outside the family knew of it. Angela, the reigning one atomweight world champion, explained the immense pressure she felt leading up to her suicide attempt. In 2017, she was preparing for a fight and was struggling to make weight due to one championship's hydration testing requirements. The pressure to maintain her undefeated record and live up to the expectations surrounding her career had pushed her to the brink.
And having to put up this face to the world that everything is okay. But sometimes it's just not.
I was getting ready for my fight camp. I was in the middle of it. I was 2 weeks out, and I thought that this fight was the most important thing in my life. I didn't want to be a disappointment.
Her mental and physical exhaustion, combined with the pressure of success, led her to make a desperate choice that nearly cost her life. This history only deepened the connection Angela felt to Victoria's struggles, and the pain of losing her was immeasurable. Victoria was described by Angela as the most beautiful soul and the best little sister in the world. Angela's tribute to her on social media reflected the family's profound sense of loss as they tried to navigate the emotional aftermath of this tragedy. After losing her sister, Angela took a step back from her MMA career, ultimately deciding to retire from professional fighting. Angela, who had been a one-championship atomweight world champion, vacated her title and chose to dedicate her energy to something greater than the sport she loved. In honor of Victoria, Angela launched a mental health nonprofit organization called Fight Story. This initiative was inspired by Victoria's legacy and aims to raise awareness of mental health challenges.
Fight Story was created because of my sister Victoria. I'm choosing to honor her and her life by moving forward and helping others. Our mission at Fight Story is to save lives.
This doesn't mean what I think it means, does it, Angela?
I'm here today to officially announce my retirement. It has been an incredible 8 years. The last thing I want to say is this, to the fighters and to everyone out there watching right now, is that the greatest battle we will ever face won't be with an opponent standing in front of us. The greatest battle will be within ourselves. We all go through struggles, but we all fight. And each day, we are victorious when we choose to rise up in the face of adversity. So thank you guys so much. I love you. Thank you.
Angela expressed that the nonprofit was a way of transforming her pain into purpose, helping others by sharing stories of struggle and triumph. In interviews, she has opened up about the pressures of being an elite athlete, including how competition can create unhealthy tunnel vision and emotional repression. Angela acknowledged that fighters often hide behind a mask to maintain their public persona, making it difficult to express vulnerability. She now advocates for finding healthy outlets to cope with the stresses of life, emphasizing the importance of sharing one's struggles with trusted loved ones. Victoria Lee's death had a profound and heartbreaking effect on her parents. The Lee family, known for their tight-knit bond, has always been deeply involved in mixed martial arts, with Ken serving as the head coach for his children at their family gym. Victoria's passing shattered the family, leading to the permanent closure of their gym. Ken and Jules have largely stayed out of the public eye since Victoria's death, preferring privacy as they cope with their grief. The family, always close, has had to support each other through an unimaginable loss. For Ken and Jules, losing their daughter has also meant confronting the pressures that come with raising children in the public eye and the high-stakes world of professional sports. Their decision to close United MMA is a testament to how deeply Victoria's death impacted their family life, as it was not only a business, but a symbol of the family's shared passion. While they have maintained a level of privacy, their grief is apparent in the actions taken to shield the family from the public after such a devastating loss. After the tragic passing of his sister Victoria Lee in December 2022, Christian Lee took a significant break from his MMA career to grieve and heal. Victoria's death deeply affected the entire Lee family, and Christian, the reigning one-championship lightweight and welterweight champion, stepped away from the sport to focus on his emotional recovery. During this time, he has been largely absent from public life and competition. However, despite the immense personal loss, Christian has expressed his intention to return to fighting. One Championship CEO Chatri Sityodpong confirmed that Christian plans to continue his MMA career, though he took all of 2023 off to process the grief and spend time with his family. Christian has shown a strong resolve to honor his sister's memory and legacy, using this time to regroup before making a comeback. Though he has been more private about his grief compared to Angela, Christian's eventual return to the cage will likely be emotionally charged, as he will carry Victoria's memory with him into every fight.
But did you ever think, maybe I'll do what Angela has done and just walk away?
Yeah, of course, it was a tough time. So fighting was the last thing I was thinking about. But at the end of the day, this is the profession I chose. I have a family to take care of, and it's still something that I love to do. I love to go in there and train. I love to go out there and fight. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, it was never going to be an option for me.
You're coming back. We can't wait to see you. But we've got a long way left to go in your fighting career.
There's another league coming up. Adrian Lee, is he close to going pro and maybe signing with one?
Yeah, my brother, he's on his way there. He's going to be the next big thing in one championship for sure. He's out here competing with black belts in tournaments, and he's just doing phenomenal at his age. I definitely think that he's better at 16 than I was at 16. He's going to be better than me for sure.
Bangkok, Thailand, to corner his brother Adrian, making his debut on Saturday, 167. Christian, it's been a while since we've seen.
Okay.
This problem. He also called this transfer of quantum information paper tangle particles and separate them by 10 feet. It will take light 10 billionths of a second to travel from one to the other. So now let's get tricky. We'll measure the horizontal
It doesn't matter. We don't need any transfer of information. We just don't need information to go through. There's some hidden variable that predetermines at the creation of these two particles how to resolve it. This experiment can be solved with hidden variables. Anyway, that's not an issue.
spin of one of the two particles and see that it's to the right. Then 5 billionths of a second later, we measure the horizontal spin of the other particle. We find 100.
It doesn't matter. You can test them at the same time. You can test one before the other or the other before the one, or at the same time. Obviously no information goes between them. What information? What they call each other and have a conversation, and based on the conversation, they decide, they come up with a strategy. This is nonsense. This doesn't make any sense. What? This doesn't make any sense. I mean, what is the story behind this? It's not enough that they make a phone call and transfer the information instantaneously. That's not enough. They also have to now... I mean, it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous.
100% of the time.
I mean, Particle 2 now has to make sure that he responds the same way to the test. How would he do that? He has to reposition himself. How? How can he reposition himself? Right? When the two particles were created, theoretically, they didn't know how they were going to be tested. And if they don't know, then what if they're being tested exactly simultaneously? So there is no time for information to move back and forth. So what do you mean instantaneously? What if they're being tested absolutely instantaneously at the very same time? Obviously, this is ridiculous. And what kind of information is going? What is Particle A telling Particle B? What exactly is being transferred? What information? What information is being... Oh, to collapse of the wave function. What does that even mean? What does that mean? That's still information that needs to travel. What does that mean? It's the collapse of these are very nice words. So information has to travel. A wave is something that has to wave. You can't say wave function and not mean wave.
That it's to the left. And remember that we did it so fast that not even light could have told the second particle the outcome of the measure.
No, you did it so fast that it was instantaneous. It was at the very same time. We saw it with the other experiment that we saw today. There was another experiment. Wait, what was that? Why do they always point up? Jesus Christ, she's hot. Oh my God, these chicks are just the best. What is she wearing? Whoa, why are they dressed like homeless? Oh my God, she's so much taller. Now they're gonna hug. So let's see the history. So there was another video that I was watching today. This one.
That we will record coincidentally.
So this experiment, this is simultaneous. There's no communication. It's completely simultaneous. So obviously there has to be a hidden variable, and it's really very simple. What are these other videos?
This is Nico from Q-Tools. We're a very small company from southern Germany that specializes in developing and selling state-of-the-art, high-performing laboratory equipment like the Q-Tech time-taking device, for example, or the Q-List distance measurement device. But we also develop and produce educational devices for use in laboratory courses or even for high schools.
And the best audio you could produce is this, that we can barely tell what you're saying?
For demonstrating basically quantum phenomena. This is also the topic of my talk today, which is quantum entanglement, and I'm going to show the concept of it very shortly, and then we'll start right into a demonstration with our QET entanglement demonstrator that I also have with me here on the side. I'm going to have some slides, but we're also going to have a look at the real device and see real measurements on a real quantum system. The phenomenon of entanglement is also known as the Einstein-Podolsky and Rosen paradox. They wrote a paper about it in 1935, where they said, look at the theory, we have found something in here that doesn't seem quite right. I'm going to start my talk by having a look at the theory and how quantum entanglement is defined in the theory. And afterwards, we're just going to have a look at the experimental setup that I have. I'm going to explain what exactly we're trying to accomplish here and what the system is doing. And afterwards, we're going to have a closer look at the results and try to interpret them and see what this all means. And then, if we still have time in the end, I will also show you a little bit of...
Okay, don't waste my time.
The phenomenon of entanglement is one of the most remarkable effects of quantum mechanics and strongly puts our image of the world around us to the test. In this video, the entanglement shall be explained in a simple and understandable way. In doing so, we will completely avoid the corresponding mathematical descriptions and derivations. Instead, we will use illustrative examples and comparisons in the appropriate places to explain the contents. This approach shows that this video isn't aimed at experienced physicists.
No, I don't care. Show me... I only want to see experiments.
Radio astronomy and radiation measurement. She is also the co-author of a textbook
with quantum technologies. This is what I do for fun, so yeah. If Copenhagen's school of thought was true, this would mean that the second an electron was measured, the positron would automatically adopt that property. That would imply communication faster than the speed of light, which according to Einstein's special relativity is not going to happen. So in Einstein's view, the particles, their properties were determined at their creation, when at the process that led to the creation of the two entangled particles, which is what those particles which are intrinsically connected are called. As a result, the result of the measurement of the electron is not communicated, but it's just there, it exists. And Copenhagen, as I said before, it would have to be communicated. Einstein didn't like this and called it spooky action at a distance. So according to Bohr's view, every particle, its properties exist in a probabilistic wave function, which means it's a probability. It can go between several different actual properties. And the wave function for one of the particles is linked to the other particles. So you can't collapse the wave function by measuring one particle without collapsing the wave function of the other particle, even if they're at a great distance. So how do I entangle photons in real life? I'm not going to be using the positron-electron process. I'm actually going to be using photons, light particles, to entangle. I have a UV laser, which is it's going to be at UV, and I will put it through a nonlinear optical crystal. That will entangle the photons, and energy is conserved because each of the photons is half the energy of the ultraviolet photons. And although each pair will come out of the crystal with a random polarization, the polarizations of the photons within the pair will forever be linked due to conservation of angular momentum. So they'll come out at random polarizations, but the polarization reference to each other will be set. For certain processes, they'll be orthogonal to each other. Certain processes, they'll be the same. So the type we use is type 1 parametric down conversion. There's a polarization of the signal and idler photons, and these two will be the same, but they'll be orthogonal or perpendicular to the original pumped photon. The two down converted photons have entangled properties because they need to conserve the energy and momentum of their single parent photon. In the process we use, there's going to be 3 probability cones. The first one and the first one and the center one will not have photons which are exactly half. There will be a weird distribution. The center cone, which is what we're aiming for, is going to be each photon will be exactly half of the original energy. So what we do to maximize the amount of entangled photons is
She has a nice body.
Put 2 of these BDO crystals perpendicular to each other, so that you have a cone of horizontally polarized photons and a cone of vertically polarized down converted photons. So this is what a BDO crystal looks like. This is what the 2 combined. You buy this, it costs about $1,000. Okay, so we have a 405 nanometer laser, which is the constant current power supply. It's 160 milliamp current, produces about 100 milliwatts of 405 nanometer light. A BG3 blue color will also be online, but yeah. So this is the setup that we do for between the laser and the BDO crystals. So what we do is we have the band pass filter, which I mentioned before, a washer, a glass polarizer, and it goes to the BDO converted, goes to the beam stop. The two from the BDO crystal, you go to a single photon counting module, which it goes to. There is an avalanche of electrons that go and trigger a measurement. The problem with the SPAD is there's a lot of noise associated with the single photon counting module we use, and we don't just leave them there. So there's 2 major applications I'm interested in. The first is quantum teleportation. in reference to her not faster than the speed of light. She communicates settings. She's able to effectively teleport sometime soon. The next, several pairs of entangled photons, and they measure the reference angles. They then communicate the reference angles to each other to create a quantum key. So just how we would be your passwords, whether intercepted by the reference polar eavesdrop without being sensed. And this isn't an issue of the physics itself, of the theory, it's an issue of the communication. So Dr. Vadim Marikov at the University of Waterloo will listen in without being $1,000. It's $1,000 for a DBO crystal, that's ways to learn quantum physics. Exactly how everything works, you know. So at the end of the day, this is set it up.
Have another round of applause for Shani Prucci. And so if you're interested in hearing a little bit more about what she's working on, her setup, any of her talks, she's actually over. It's not every day that you're able to. Let's have another round of applause for Shani Prucci. So it's not.
Shani Prucci. What is she? What kind of a name is that? Anyway, I think this is the best experiment that shows that it's at the same time. This is a very simple experiment. You can probably reproduce it at home. It's very simple to reproduce this. So you have at the creation, when you create both particles, you add another variable that is already the coin. The flip of the coin is already done at the creation, and each of the particles knows how it will react to the test. It's a flip of the coin, but it is determined upon creation. And that's why they both react the same way. They both react randomly, but based on the same random seed. It's the same random seed that's injected into both of them. So they both react randomly, but the same way. It's random, but it's the same way. And again, randomly, opposite way. But it's the same. They both have the same random seed. So that's it. We don't need to. We don't need anything else. And then when they're created separately without a unifying random seed, then you get this coincidence, 25% coincidence. That's fine. Everything makes sense. Everything is fine. Okay. So let's now go to listen to Zabine. Zabine, I heard her say
A young mom of two who was planning her own funeral has died. Erica Diarte Carr from Salt Lake City, Utah, was a single mom to a 7- and 5-year-old. She loved dancing and lip syncing to songs and putting on makeup. In 2022, she was diagnosed with a rare cancer, small cell lung carcinoma, followed by Cushing's syndrome at the beginning of 2024. It caused rapid weight gain and swelling. She started her own GoFundMe, writing, "During these next couple of months, I need to make sure my kids will be okay after I am gone. I have looked into the expenses and I am needing to raise about $5,000 to ensure funeral costs are covered. Plus, I'm wanting to leave something behind for my babies." It's since surpassed $5,000, growing to nearly $1.2 million. A relative posted on Facebook that Erica had passed away. She fought a long and hard battle. She was strong and held on as long as she could for her.
Oh my God, these stories are killing me. Jesus.
An encounter after petting a dog ends with one man dead and the man accused of shooting him now on trial. Jordan Eaton is charged with murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Today, the jury saw cell phone video of that deadly shooting. Erica Hernandez takes us inside the courtroom.
Oh my God. So I want to see. I want to see. What do I want to see? I want to see Sabine Hossenfelder Nobel entanglement experiment. But this
Quantum
was
mechanics is more than 100 years. The Nobel Prize in Physics will be announced on October.
If you know one thing about quantum mechanics, an insight derived from quantum mechanics. And not only
The 2024 Nobel Prize in Physics did not go to physicists. It went to two computer scientists for developing the first neural networks, which became the basis of what we Imagine you make a prediction for a discovery that wins the Nobel Prize. Your prediction turns out to be correct.
locality means that to get from one point to another, the scientific method is only a few hundred years old.
What are companies doing about
Today? Hi everybody. I have decided that this channel lacks a history part because
100 chance.
All right, time for another draftphysics.com. Debate physics. Yeah, I wish.
Time videos, we have a written version of our science news.
Immense amounts of time are required to. So exactly what is it that I'm doing? I don't know.
I don't trust science and I don't trust scientists. That article I ever wrote for Quantum magazine, because
a lot of you have asked me to do a video.
Here we what's known.
Quantum mechanics is
being a physicist isn't easy.
Let me try. No, actually, what I need to
Physicists
do.
at the University of
Filters. Sort by upload date.
The Nobel Prize in Physics is typically awarded to scientists who make sense of nature. Those
No, it should be from a couple of weeks ago, maybe
Gentlemen,
months ago.
gentlemen won the award for groundbreaking research and
Sort by upload date and
the Nobel Prize.
There's only 3 videos.
The Nobel.
Quantum mechanics is more than 100
of what we now call. Imagine you make a prediction for a discovery. That's what happens at that semi-transparent plate, also called a beam splitter. One particle won't affect the other one. You could, for example, flip the spin of one of the particles of non-locality, but it's not an action at a distance. What happens at that semi-transparent. According to the headlines, last year's Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded for showing that the universe is not locally real, or for spooky quantum behavior and spooky action at a distance, or for exploring quantum weirdness. What's that supposed to mean? Is the universe really not locally real, or not really local, or not really real? That's what we'll talk about today. My direct plan for this video is that we'll first look at what locality means, then we'll talk about quantum mechanics, and then we'll combine both. Let's start with locality. You all know what locality means. It means if you want to go to New York City, you don't just disappear.
Locality means that if you want to influence something, you can't. You can only influence what's next to you and what's next to that and what's next to that. You can't, there's no spooky action at a distance. There's no Harry Potter magic woo. Nothing. Whatever you want to move, you have to touch. Anything you want to move, you have to touch. It has to be local. You can't move something at a distance that doesn't exist. Everything must be local. Reality is local or locality.
from Heathrow and reappear at JFK. You must get on a plane, fly in a seat through the sky, and then drag yourself into the immigration queue at US Customs. There's no instantaneous going anywhere. It's not just travel, it's generally any interaction. You can only act on things next to you. And it's not just you. No, really, I swear. Anything can only interact with things right next to it. This is what we mean by locality. Non-locality would basically be a portal. Something goes in and instantaneously appears elsewhere. Now, if you could travel non-locally, that might allow you to go faster than light, but it doesn't necessarily have to. Alice could go to Tokyo faster than light without taking a portal. Bob could go through a lane portal that brings him to New York even later than Air France and leaves his bag in Paris again. So non-locality and faster than light travel are two separate things, but the two are related in that Expedia isn't offering either. Maybe more importantly, though not unrelatedly, neither of them is allowed in Einstein's theories of space and time. Yes, that guy again. We can make a little drawing to see what this means.
Oh my god.
This is a space-time diagram. The horizontal axis is one dimension of space, say left or right. The vertical axis is time. If you don't move but sit still, that's described by a vertical line in this diagram. If you move at a constant velocity, that makes a line at a fixed angle. By convention, a 45-degree angle is the speed of light. According to Einstein, nothing can go faster than light. This means if an event happens here, then anything that can be influenced by this event must lie within a region that's bounded by 45-degree lines emerging from the event. This boundary is called the future light cone, and the region that can be influenced from the event is that inside the future light cone. Likewise, that's a region which contains everything that can influence the event, which is the inside of the past light cone. If something could go faster than the speed of light, it could enter your light cone like this. And if non-locality was possible, it wouldn't have to respect those light cones either. It could just jump into your light cone. For the rest of this video, we'll assume that faster than light travel can't happen and just look at non-locality. If you'd rather hear me talk about faster than light travel, I have another video on that. Our experience suggests that reality is local, in that these jumps in space-time don't happen. There's no action at a distance, no portals. However, our descriptions of reality are not always local. Suppose I take two sheets of paper and write the number +1 on one and -1 on the other. I put them in two identical envelopes. Then I send one to Alice in Tokyo and one to Bob in New York, who's still waiting for Air France to deliver his bag. Alice and Bob both know what I did, but not what's in their envelope. +1 went to Bob and the -1 to Alice, or the other way around. It's a 50-50 chance. But the moment Alice opens her envelope and finds +1, she knows that somewhere in New York there's an envelope with the number -1. You probably didn't find this particularly remarkable. Well, what did you expect clicking on a video about locality? Only so much I can do to spice it up. Remarkable or not, this simple example will be useful later. Thing is, these numbers in these envelopes are correlated. You don't know what either is, but if you know one, the other one is not random anymore. And this correlation can stretch over a distance. If you learn what one number in this correlated pair is, you learn something about the other number elsewhere instantaneously. You could call that a kind of non-locality, but it's not an action at a distance. The only action that happens is an update of knowledge about something elsewhere. The action itself is completely local. It happens in Bob's brain, or Alice's, unless maybe they've become so bored by my number games there isn't anything left of their brains. So the lesson of the first part is there are two types of non-locality. The one is a
This is a good episode. I mean, these are not dad jokes. I mean, these are very cynical jokes. This is good stuff.
physical non-locality, an action at a distance, which is like something going through a portal. The other is a non-local correlation that allows us to acquire knowledge about what happens elsewhere. But in this case, the only physical changes are local. Let's then talk about quantum mechanics. In quantum mechanics, everything is described by a wave function, usually denoted with the Greek letter psi. The wave function is a device that we use to calculate the probability of getting a particular measurement outcome, but it doesn't predict the outcome with certainty. We say that quantum mechanics is not deterministic. Imagine, for example, you have a single quantum of light, a photon, and you send it through a semi-transparent plate. If you still have the space-time diagram in your head, please take it out and put it aside for now. This illustration just shows two dimensions of space. Think tabletop. The photon has a 50% probability of going through the plate and a 50% probability of being reflected. So long as we don't observe the photon, its wave function changes locally from one place to the next by spreading into these two directions. But once we make a measurement, we know where the photon went. Then the probability jumps to 100% on the one side where you've measured it and drops to 0% on the other side. This is like when Alice opens her envelope and sees the number +1. Now she knows that the probability that Bob had +1 is 0. And like Alice adjusts her probability for Bob when she opens the envelope, once we measure the photon on one side, we have to update the wave function to reflect this change in probability on the other side. Why? Because otherwise it doesn't agree with our observations. This update is also sometimes referred to as the collapse or reduction of the wave function, and it's non-local. You make a measurement in one place and the wave function changes elsewhere. So quantum mechanics is non-local in some sense. The question is, in which sense? As we saw previously, just because you gain knowledge about something that happened elsewhere doesn't mean there was a non-local action. Maybe the wave function just describes knowledge rather than being real itself. Maybe the photon really went one way or the other. You just didn't know it, and the measurement revealed its real state. Being a wave function isn't easy. Not only do people reduce and collapse you, they also then argue that it doesn't matter because you aren't real. The quantum mechanical version of the envelope example goes like this. Imagine you have a particle with spin 0 that decays into two particles that can each either have spin value plus or minus 1. One flies to the left, the other one to the right. The total spin is conserved in the decay, so you know that either the particle going left has spin value +1 and the one going right has -1, or the other way around. But you don't know which has which spin. These two particles are entangled. Entanglement is a correlation, like the correlation between the numbers in the envelopes, and like the correlation between the envelopes, it can stretch over a distance. The difference between the two cases is that if you think that quantum mechanics describes all there is, then before you make a measurement, the particles really are in both states at once, and then the update is really physically non-local. The idea that this update is physically real is what Einstein called a spooky action at a distance. He thought that can't be right. Einstein believed that the real process must be local, and that the update just revealed something you didn't previously know. That something you reveal in a measurement is usually called the hidden variable. It could be, for example, the value of the spin that the particle really had before you did the measurement and found out what it is.
It's not enough. It has to also be the result of the test. It has to be predetermined. Otherwise, it's not enough to know the value of the spin. She doesn't know this. Weird.
Bohr held against that. He said there are no hidden variables and no underlying information that you can reveal. The wave function is all there is, and the collapse is really non-local. Bohr seems to have liked quantum mechanics because he thought that its indeterminism makes place for free will, though that's rather questionable. We just talked about that a few weeks ago. Einstein did not use the phrase spooky action at a distance to refer to entanglement. To begin with, the example in which he coined the phrase didn't use entangled particles. I went through the history in the previous video, but more importantly, entanglement has no action. It's just a correlation that stretches over a distance, like the correlation between the envelopes. When I read the headlines about last year's Nobel Prize, I got the impression that some science writers believe entangled particles are somehow mysteriously linked to each other. They seem to think that if you do something to one particle in an entangled pair, then that'll immediately affect the other one. But they
Are you kidding? Most of the scientific world believes that. Okay, let me just paste it in my channel. Is there anyone? No, there's no one in there, but let me paste it in Globe channel as well. I mean, doesn't she know that most of the scientific community believes in spooky action at a distance and the rest of it? I mean, Bohr believed it. So what she doesn't know that most of the world follows Bohr?
this isn't so. It's only when you measure one particle, then you have to update the wave function of both. So long as you don't measure them, doing something to one particle won't affect the other one. You could, for example, flip the spin of one of the particles in an entangled pair so that one becomes -1 and the other way around. You can do that without measuring the spin. Like you can do this in reality, in the laboratory, not just with mathematics. If you flip the spin of one particle without measuring it, this will not do anything to the particle it's entangled with. It's not as weird as they made you believe it is it? Okay, so entanglement is just a correlation over long distances.
You can flip the spin of one of the particles without influencing the other one. Really? Oh my god. Really? Oh my god. If that's true, then they lied to us.
But does it at least allow us to send signals faster than light? Unfortunately not. It doesn't work because you can't force the outcome of your measurement on one of the entangled particles to be a particular value. It'll just be randomly distributed according to the probability given by the wave function. This means that on the other end, they won't know whether you've made a measurement any more than Bob knows whether Alice has opened her envelope. If quantum mechanics is correct, then no information can be sent faster than light. One can mathematically prove that this is the case, not just for this experiment, but for any possible experiment. It's called the no signaling theorem. But because of this randomness of quantum mechanics, it's also rather unclear in which sense the collapse is even non-local. If making the measurement on one of the pair of entangled particles doesn't change the measurement outcome on the other one, then what is non-local in the first place? Enter John Bell. Bell tried to find a way to pin down what it means that quantum mechanics is non-local. Please put the space-time diagram back into your head because we need it again. We've seen earlier that without faster-than-light travel, everything that an event might be influenced by has to be in the past light cone. But if the theory is also local, then you don't need the entire inside of the light cone. This is because if you know what happens at one moment in time, you can calculate what happens later. If the theory is deterministic, you can calculate it exactly. If it's not deterministic, probabilistically. This means all you need is the information at one particular moment in time for anyone's notion of time. In one dimension, that moment is a line going through the inside of the past light cone. In 3 dimensions, it's what's called a space-like hypersurface, just so you don't go away disappointed about the lack of incomprehensible terminology. The point is that the information at one moment in the past light cone of the event is all you need to calculate what happens at the event, if the theory is local. If the theory isn't local, then that doesn't work, because information could jump into your light cone later. Bell's insight was now that you can use this to decide whether the theory is local, and it works even if the theory has a random element. Suppose you have all available information on this slice here, and you use that to make your best prediction for what happened here. Then the theory is local if information from over here doesn't tell you anything new about what happened at A. Bell called this property local causality. If, on the other hand, the theory is not locally causal, then information can jump into the light cone after your slice, and that can tell you something about what happens at that event. Quantum mechanics is not locally causal. Think back of the earlier example with the entangled particles. Let's say they are created here. One goes left, one goes right. In the space-time diagram, this means they go diagonally, no less than a 45-degree angle. You make 2 measurements here and here. Let's call them A and B. We want to know what happens at measurement A. All the information you could have about it is down here in the wave function. This wave function, as we've seen earlier, does not allow you to predict the measurement outcome at A, just the probability of a measurement outcome. It's either spin -1 or +1 with 50% probability each. Here's the thing. If you make a measurement over here at B and you find it's +1, then you know the spin at A is -1. So what happens at B does add information to the inside of the past light cone, and quantum mechanics is not locally causal. The important thing is now that local causality is a property of a model, in this case a property of quantum mechanics. The relevant question is whether it's also a property of reality. If quantum mechanics was all there is, then that would be the case. The wave function would be how the world really works, and it would have a spooky action at a distance. But if quantum mechanics was not all there is, then the wave function down here was not the entire information. That'd be a hidden variable there from which the outcome followed. And if you had the entire information, then adding the measurement outcome from B would not provide any further information. Quantum mechanics would still not be locally causal, but reality would be. So which one's right? That's what John Bell was trying to figure out. Wow, you're still with me. That's lovely. I really appreciate the company. Let's look again at that semi-transparent plate because it can teach us something very important. We'll now try to build a simple hidden variables model that explains what happens.
I have no idea what she's talking about.
At that semi-transparent plate, also called a beam splitter. We want to do this with hidden variables, and we want to do it locally, so no action at a distance. The hidden variables are usually called lambda. So we'll say if lambda is 1, then the photon goes that way. If lambda is 3, then it goes the other way. Why 3 and not 2? Because I know what's coming next and you don't. Now we put 2 mirrors here and here so that the photons don't run off our screen, and another 2 semi-transparent plates there. Okay, so now we have 4 different paths, each with 25% probability. We'll give those the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we'll combine these 2 paths by directing both towards the same beam splitter. If our hidden variable explanation was correct, then we should get half of the photons here in detector A and half here in detector B. But this isn't what happens. Indeed, you have probably noticed that this setup is what's called a Mach-Sender interferometer. If the paths are the same length, then the photon will always go to detector B. You can measure it and all. It's definitely real. The interference in these detectors is exquisitely sensitive to the length of the paths, which is why one can use this type of interferometer to measure tiny deformations. This is how a gravitational wave interferometer works. But how does it work? Well, in quantum mechanics, the photon is described by a wave function, and waves can interfere with themselves, either constructively or destructively. In quantum mechanics, the photon goes over both paths, and on this output, the wave interferes destructively with itself, so no signal, and all photons go the other way. But the price you have to pay for this is that if you measure which path the photon went, you need a non-local collapse. How can we use hidden variables to get this done locally? Well, no one's ever said that we can't have waves that go 2 paths in a local hidden variable model. All we need to do is say, if we measure which path the photon...
Yeah, I remember watching this. I don't understand this part, and I tried and couldn't figure this out.
goes, then we use these variables 1, 2, 3, 4, and the photon behaves like a particle. If we measure the interference between the paths, then that's hidden variable number 5. The photon behaves like a wave and goes only into detector B. Problem solved. It's local because the photon goes on one continuous path into the detector where it's measured. For this to work, the value of the hidden variable that determines what the photon does must depend on what you measure. It's called a violation of measurement independence. So the lesson is, if we want a local hidden variable model that reproduces quantum mechanics correctly, then it needs to violate measurement independence. This finally brings us to Bell's theorem. I'm not going to explain Bell's theorem because you've already watched 20 videos about it and it didn't help. I'll just tell you what it says. Bell's theorem says if you want a local hidden variables model that reproduces quantum mechanics correctly, then it needs to violate measurement independence. Isn't that what we just concluded from this little example with the interferometer? Yes, Bell's theorem says the same thing. You see, what happened is that Bell originally just assumed that measurement independence is fulfilled. He then proved that any local hidden variables theory which fulfills this assumption will obey an inequality for the correlations of certain measurement outcomes. It's now called Bell's inequality. Quantum mechanics can violate this inequality. What the Nobel Prize was awarded for is experimentally demonstrating that the inequalities are indeed violated by observed measurement outcomes. This means that either reality respects measurement independence but is not locally causal, or it's locally causal and violates measurement independence. Just logically, it could be a combination of both, but I don't know why you'd want to do that. Since Bell had forgotten about this assumption of measurement independence, he mistakenly thought that demonstrating an experimental violation of his inequality would rule out all local hidden variables models, and thereby show that spooky action at a distance is real. Indeed, most physicists still seem to believe this. At this point, you might think Sabina is talking complete rubbish, because if that's right, why doesn't anyone ever mention this? Well, first of all, you don't have to take my word for it. It's all in the published literature and easy to check. In fact, one of the people who pointed out that Bell had forgotten this assumption was John Clauser, who was one of the recipients of the 2022 Nobel Prize. Why physicists refuse to mention it is a very interesting question to which I don't have an answer. My best guess is that they want reality to be weird because they like the mystery. There are several hidden variables models that are
that's my intuition.
local and that reproduce the predictions of quantum mechanics by violating measurement independence. I'll leave you links in the info below. And yes, a violation of measurement independence has also been called superdeterminism, though this term is extremely misleading. I talked about this in an earlier video. In summary, quantum mechanics is not local. What makes it non-local is the collapse of the wave function. The question is whether this non-locality is physically real. If the collapse of the wave function was a physical process, it would be what Einstein called a spooky action at a distance, and reality would be non-local. It has not been shown that this is indeed the case, no matter how many headlines say otherwise. Entanglement is a non-local correlation that can stretch over long distances, but it's not what Einstein meant by action at a distance because there's no action in it. If you're a fan of the many words interpretation of quantum mechanics, you probably took issue with some things I said, but this video is already too long, so I'll talk about this some other time. If you want to hear me complain about many words, don't forget to subscribe. Yes, I admit there's a lot going on in this video that I only touched on very briefly. What is a wave function? How do you get probabilities out of it? How does interference work? And why is it important? If you want to understand this in more depth, you can do this with my course on quantum mechanics at brilliant.org.
Oh my god, I did not understand this video. Oh my god. But this is very interesting. What are the comments going to say? Nobel. So upsetting. I talk to people.